Many people find climbing the career ladder or succeeding in one's own business usually means doing some speaking in front of groups. It's a credibility builder. However, because of the fear of public speaking, it's an actively many dread. However, it consistently ranks as one of the most common fears people share and holds many people back from reaching their potential. His books, No Sweat Public Speaking and No Sweat Elevator Speech, are purchased internationally and have rave reviews on Amazon.com. He has been a local TEDx talk coach and interviewed by local, national, and international media. His podcast channel is one of the top 25 public speaking podcasts on the web. If you have this fear or just want to be a better presenter, our speaker has a message for you. I did a little research and discovered our guest speaker has been in the coffee service business for many years. Since he used to sell coffee, I asked him to perk up our meeting and not let it become a grind. I've been told he espressos himself well and would never be considered a drip. I don't want to spill the beans on his talk. I'm curious, as I'm sure you are, to see and hear what he's brewed up for us. The title of his talk is No Sweat Public Speaking. Please help me welcome my friend, Fred Miller.
Karen, that was a great introduction.
Thank you.
Thanks, a latte. Well, come on, I know this is a fun group. All right, picture this. It's Monday morning, and your boss calls you into his office and says, Bobby, as you know, this Friday is the most important day of the year for our company. It's our annual open house. 100 of our best clients and 50 of the best prospects we have ever had are going to be here for the entire day. The president of the company wants each department to give a 15-minute presentation. I bet you down for 1:30, right after lunch. Well, people will have one of several reactions to a speaking opportunity like that. First one might be, yes, this is my ticket to the executive suite, a corner office, my own parking spot, the executive washroom. I'm always ready to get up in front of a group and strut my stuff. I wish it was this afternoon. Another reaction might be, Prozac. Seriously? Just hearing about public speaking, I'm having flashbacks to Mrs. Johnson's 4th grade class. I had a 5-minute book report, and with all the bathroom breaks I took, it took me about a half hour. When I get off work, I'm going to Walgreens. I'm going to get a triple refill of that script, and I'm going to start popping those puppies at the counter. Friday open house, I hope I live that long. And the third reaction might be colonoscopy. If this guy really thinks I'm going to put my career on the line in front of people I don't know, he's nuts. I'm going back to my office, I'm calling my gastroenterologist, and I'm rescheduling that procedure for Friday. Open house, I'm out of here. Now, if your reaction to a speaking opportunity is more like 2 and 3, you're not alone. Lots of people have a fear of public speaking. That's a problem, and here's why. We perceive really good speakers as experts. Got experts here, right? Experts command more money for their products and services. We like to work with experts. But those of us with a fear of public speaking, we're not likely to take, and we're certainly not going to make those speaking opportunities. And we lose out. We lose out because the research shows speaking opportunities are business opportunities. Speaking opportunities are career opportunities. Speaking opportunities are leadership opportunities. And people who take and make those speaking opportunities grow their businesses, advance their careers, and increase their leadership roles. We agree?
Yes.
Well, I've got bad news and good news. The bad news is there's no magic pill you can take that'll make you a better speaker and get rid of that fear of public speaking. Maybe Pfizer has it in clinical trials. I don't advise waiting for it. But here's the good news. It's a skill you can learn. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I got a call from an OB/GYN. He was in New York, moving to St. Louis, going to be affiliated with one of the big hospital chains. Terrible fear of public speaking. I could hear in her voice, and she told me, she said, this is really a challenge for me. I have to present to colleagues. I'm going to be teaching a class. Can you help me? I said, I don't know, Doc. Can I ask you a few questions? She said, sure. I said, you're an OB/GYN. That means you deliver baby boys and baby girls, right? She goes, yes. I said, well, have you ever delivered a baby public speaker? And she kind of chuckled. She said, no, Fred, I haven't. I said, let me ask you another question. You're a doctor, you're an adult, you've dealt with death, it's part of life. Do you know anyone who's passed away giving a presentation? And she kind of chuckled again and said, no, I don't. I said, doctor, you just proved my point. There's not a public speaking gene that we're either born or not born with. It's a relatively safe activity to engage in. Somewhere between birth and death, it's a skill we can learn. You weren't born knowing how to drive a car, use a computer, ride a bicycle. You went to medical school. You've done tougher things. So going forward, we're going to talk about the components, parts, and elements of a speech. I'll name them, explain them, give examples. We're going to talk about things that will take that presentation from blah to ah. We're going to talk about the fear of public speaking. You know, why people have it and give nuggets to lessen it. And then we're going to have lessen those fears. So let me get this going here. See where. Okay, so let's get started. So presentations are given all the time. They're given internally and they're given externally to different clubs and groups that people belong to. They're given to large groups, small groups, and one-on-one. Sometimes those presentations are formal, sometimes they're informal. But the majority of them are underwhelming, right? All right, so as I give this presentation, take what I'm talking about and put it into your world. See how that works. Whoops, I'm a little bit behind on, sorry, okay. But first I want to issue a disclaimer. The goal here, wait a minute, I'll get this. The goal, I had the same problem you had, Mark, you know, I'm figuring it out. You're not alone, okay. The goal is to learn how to give a great presentation. And I'm going to show you my way. Okay, now I got it. I'm going to show you my way. It works really, really well for me and lots of people who I've trained and coached. But honestly, some people do it differently. Some do it way differently, and their stuff works out real well also. So my suggestion is be a sponge, absorb everything, and squeeze out what you don't need, and do it your own way. All right, let me stop here for a moment. What did that disclaimer just do? What did it do for me?
Develop trust.
And credibility, right? Yeah. How many speakers kind of like my way or the highway? I know it all. But here's the thing. If I go through this presentation and I say something you disagree with, you think that's garbage, you might tune me out for the whole presentation. So think about using a disclaimer in your presentations. It can make a huge difference. Does that make sense, everyone? Yeah. Yes, little bitty things that are going to make a difference. The other thing I want to do, before I close the presentation, actually I'm going to do this after each section, I'm going to ask for lessons learned. And here's why. We have the attention span of a gnat. Really. And Steve's going to hear something that Karen didn't hear, and John's going to think most of the stuff I say is garbage, so he won't. And then Richard's going to hear something that makes some sense to him, and we'll share those things. First of all, when I say we're going to do that, that puts you on a little bit of guard. I might call on you and ask for lessons learned, and you're going to pay a little bit more attention. And I think this will work in your world also. So public speaking, giving talks, respect for this, it's all the same. Well, why speak? Well, we've already talked about it. It's a great way to advance your career. It will improve your one-on-one. In fact, I remember when I was in Toastmasters, the very first night, one of the members said to me, even if you never speak in front of a group, the ability to do so will improve your one-on-one. And we all do that. And the other thing is, most people don't want to be up here. It's a real confidence builder. So it's a good thing to do. Whoops, I got to back up. Okay, so what do I want to accomplish today? Well, the goal of all communication, verbal, written, or visual, is the same. We want the audience as quickly as possible to get it. You may not agree with everything I say. You may not agree with anything. But if you don't get it, we can't have a conversation going forward. Now, to do that, you as a speaker, what I've got to do today, 3 things. Number 1, educate. My goal is that you leave here knowing a whole lot more than you did come in about public speaking and presentation skills. I need to entertain you. We like to be entertained, don't we? If I'm entertaining you, I have your attention. If I have your attention, that increases the odds you get it. And I need to explain it. I need to explain it simply enough that you get it the first time. Because if you're sitting there thinking, I have no idea what he's talking about, I don't know what that means, you're going to tune me out. Has anybody had any, we have some Toastmasters here, right? Anybody been Toastmasters? Okay, fantastic. Anybody had any public speaking training? Okay, great. Okay, we're going to go through the basics. There's 2 components to a presentation, content and delivery. Content is the message. Delivery is presenting that message. On the content side, there is the title of the presentation, the introduction. Karen did a dynamite job of it. Really good. There's the opening, body, and the conclusion. On the delivery side, there is verbal communication. That's your voice and how you use it, and nonverbal. Of the 2 main components, content and delivery surpasses content. People believe what they see. And you can have the greatest content in the world, but if you don't deliver it in a manner that educates, entertains, and explains, they'll never get it. And on the delivery side, nonverbal communication surpasses verbal. Again, people believe what they see. And if everything's not in sync, you believe what you see. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So we'll start with content, and we'll start with the title of your presentation. The title of the presentation should be like the marquee of a theater, the headline of a newspaper, the title of a great book, and the subject line of an email. If those don't grab your attention, you won't go in the theater, you won't read the rest of the what the headline was about, the article, you won't pull the book off the shelf, and you won't open the email. Whoops, let me stop there. Okay, so the title of my book is No Sweat Public Speaking. Think about this in terms of articles you write and presentations you give. We will do more to avoid pain than seek pleasure. All right, personal example. I get an annual physical. For years, the doctor had said to me, Fred, lose a little weight, you'll feel better, you'll look better, you'll be healthier. Yeah, sound familiar? I tried for years to lose 5 pounds. I couldn't do it. A couple summers ago, I happened to be in the hospital for 6 days, and I'm okay. But I've seen a bunch of doctors, and one doc walks in, he says, you're diabetic. I said, no. I said, I'm pre-diabetic. He says, I'm an endocrinologist. Trust me, you're diabetic. Well, I have a sister-in-law who lost an eye, lost a leg to diabetes. I know somebody right now didn't take care of their diabetes. They're on dialysis. They are not a candidate for a transplant. And they have Parkinson's, another side effect. I went from being ticked off to being nagged to lose a few pounds to open checkbook, WashU Med Center, what do I have to do? So my title, No Sweat Public Speaking, I chose that rather than How to Give a Good Speech. Speaking 101. So think about that in terms of the presentations that you're developing and the titles you use. So the introduction, very important. Always write your own introduction. Because if you don't, they're going to grab it off something off the internet about you. And quite frankly, nobody cares where you went to school, how many kids you have, the fact that you collect rocks. Well, they might care where you go to school if it's St. Louis. Yeah. But otherwise, how many times have you heard an introduction goes on, and now he's going to talk about networking? It has nothing to do with it. So write your own, as soon as you get a gig, write your own introduction, get it to the person who's introducing you, and tell them it's your responsibility to write it. You know, they should read it as if they wrote it. So the introduction answers 3 questions. Why this subject? Why this speaker? Why now? It's an integral part of the presentation. And you want to get to that person as soon as possible, because if they invest the time and effort in writing an introduction for you, they're going to feel like you kind of went behind their back. Because the introduction is your credentials. You know, people are thinking, why is he up there? You know, your audience is investing time, sometimes money, and definitely opportunity costs. Opportunity cost is, I could be doing something else right now. You know, why is she up there giving a presentation? This better be really good. And one of the things is to write a book. How many people have written a book? Okay, fantastic. All right, for the ones who haven't, though, when you write your introduction, include, and the title of her upcoming book is. Now, let me tell you a story. I was speaking to the Fenton Chamber of Commerce, I believe. I had written this introduction, and the guy's reading my introduction. He goes, and the title of his upcoming book is, you have a book coming out? I said, I do. He said, wow, that's amazing. We perceive speakers and authors as experts. We love to work with experts. So think of the title of that book. You didn't tell them what's going to come out. You didn't tell them when the book signing is going to be. You could change that. But that is huge. Absolutely huge. Now, I will tell you this. As soon as you announce it, every time you see somebody who heard you, when's that book coming out? When's the book signing? Where's it going to be? But it is huge. And it's a lot easier to write a book now with print on demand and everything else than it used to be. But that is huge. So include that in your introduction so people know that. The opening of the presentation has two parts. You want to have a strong opening that grabs their attention. So hopefully when I said, I've got you scheduled for 1:30, people are thinking, I'm glad this isn't for real. You know, you want to grab their attention. Then you tell them what you're going to tell them. You know, give them a roadmap. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to ask for lessons learned, and then have time for questions and answers. That's very important because I told you how I'm going to handle questions. We're going to talk more about that. But people can mess up your whole presentation by raising their hand and asking questions. So if you ask me a question about the second last slide I have, Richard, what do? Stop what I'm doing? I told you how I'm going to handle questions. After each section, I've got a certain period of time set aside for a few questions just on that topic that I covered. And then I'm going to ask for lessons learned. Now, if somebody does raise their hand, I'll say, do me a big favor. Write that down. You know, and when we come to Q&A, be sure to ask me if I have an answer. Has anybody ever experienced that? Oh my gosh. Or how about this? You've been to a presentation and somebody's going along and they say, oh my gosh, I got 5 minutes left and I've got 20 slides. Boom, 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 boom. So if you're up here, you're in charge of everything. It's your responsibility. It's your responsibility for doing that. All right. So then I'll give the conclusion after questions. And we'll talk more about that later. The body of the speech has a formula. And that formula is make a point, tell a story. It's all about stories. 3 to 5 stories per speech. Once upon a time. I remember as a kid, my grandmother would tell me stories. My mother would read me stories. Now I've got grandkids, I'm telling them stories. When we tell stories, there's something called brain coupling. There's actually chemical relations. And we go in the hard drive of our brain and we pull out a story that matches it. We also can feel like we're kind of in that story. And for the person telling the story, they're kind of reliving it also. It's dynamite. So say I was going to give a story about persistence. Whoop. Wait a minute. Had a little sound there, but it didn't go off. Okay. Persistence. Well, maybe I would tell a story about Thomas Jefferson. No, Thomas Edison. Different Thomas. Yeah. So Thomas Edison, the story is it took him 10,000 tries to invent the light bulb. And a reporter once asked him, said, Mr. Edison, how do you feel about having failed so many times? He said, no, I never did. I successfully found a lot of ways that didn't work. Who's heard that story before? Absolutely. That's the problem with that story. I was at a presentation once, 2 speakers back to back. Same story. Honestly, this. But here's the solution. You all have stories. Overcoming adversity, going upstream when people are coming downstream. No one else can tell your story unless you've given them permission. And you know your story. You know your story. It's all about the backstory. I do some work with Midwest Bank. This is Orvin Kimbrough. He's the president of the bank. God, he was raised by a single mother. He went through Annie Malone, different children's homes, all kinds of stuff. That's part of the bank's story. This is the guy who's leading us. And he does a lot of work in the city. This is a typical food ad for a grocery store. It's got the items, has the prices. Anybody go to Trader Joe's? Yeah. I mean, it's a whole article about each item. That gives a whole lot more value to it. People like that. Now, I drink Jack Daniel's honey whiskey. Not to excess, I drink. But there used to be a show on television, Ultimate Factories. And they did stories about IKEA, Winnebago, Corvette, and they did one on Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels is manufactured in Lynchburg, Tennessee. It's a dry county. They can't drink this where they make it. There's special spring water that's used. The barrels that they cure the whiskey in come from, I think, Kentucky. It's a special wood. They char the inside of the barrel. They're up on these racks. They rotate them every X number of days. When you know that backstory, $15.95, not bad. I understand. It's all about that story. Met a guy once, had a bow tie. I was at a networking event. This guy really looked dapper. And I was kind of sensitive to, my radar was up for bow ties. My daughter married a pediatric neurologist, and they wear bow ties, kind of like Patch Adams, remember the movie?
Yeah.
So I went up to him and I said, "Love the tie, man." He said, "Well, thank you." He said, "I wear it for my dad." I said, "Ooh." I said, that sounds like a story. Would you mind sharing it? He said, "Oh, I'd love to. I'm honored." He said, when I was growing up, I always watched my dad get dressed. I always wore a tie. You know, four in hand, Windsor knot, and bow tie. My dad died before he ever saw the success I've had. And when I pass a mirror and I straighten my tie, I feel my dad. Oh. I said, I told him what I do. I said, "Could I interview you, write an article?" Well, he said I'd be honored. And the story went far, far beyond that. No sweat elevator speech. I wish Bill were here, because here's the backstory on that. Because people have said, "Why drive on an elevator speech?" You heard me tell that story, Steve. So one day after one of the e4e meetings, Bill comes up to me and says, "Hey, Fred, you're our public speaking expert. How about a presentation next month on how to develop and deliver a great elevator speech?" And I'm thinking to myself, geez, I struggle with that all the time. It's a work in progress. I can't believe he's asking me that. Well, a couple things. When Bill said, "How about," that wasn't a question. It wasn't even a suggestion. You know, I knew my assignment for next month. I had no idea where I was going to begin. By chance, the next day I was in my Sandler sales course, and somebody said something that sparked me getting started on it. And it's a great story, but I'll have to tell you if you invite me back, talk about elevator speeches. And then sometime I'm giving a class and somebody says, "I don't have a story." I go, "Really? Take out your phone. Open your photos. Start scrolling." I'll never forget that. I did one class and a gal stands up. She says, "That's my dog. When I was going through recovery, that's the only friend I had." Another relation, that's my mother. She's 94. Let me tell you how you live to be 94. We all have stories. It's just unbelievable. Let's talk about questions. Questions, we already talked about a little bit. I'm going to take them after I take questions. But questions can really mess you up. So when it comes time for questions, one thing people usually say is, "Do you have any questions?" Don't ask that. That's a yes or no question. You know, better to say, "I told you I had time set aside for questions. What questions do you have for me?" Take it a step further, go, "Told you I had time for questions. This is that time. What questions do you have for me?" And make it even better, say, "I'm going to ask the first question." Because one of the questions I'm always asked is, and what you're doing then is kind of priming the pump. A couple other things about questions. If you don't know the answer, don't fake it. Do not fake it. Somebody will find out that you did. Here's another good suggestion. Don't throw it out to the audience. Let me tell you what happened to me. I was speaking at St. Charles County, St. Louis College or something. I can't remember. But anyway, somebody asked a question, And I didn't know the answer. I said, does anybody know the answer? And the lady raised her hand and said something. Well, afterwards, Chris Robinson. Anybody know Chris Robinson?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Chris comes up to me. Chris is a speaker. He's done dynamite. So Chris comes up to me. He says, can I give you a suggestion? I said, well, yeah, I hope that's why you're here. He said, you shouldn't have thrown that question out to the audience. I said, why not, Chris? Sounded good to me. He said, how do you know it's the right answer? What if somebody had challenged you? When you threw it out to the audience, you lost control. I'll never forget that. So if you don't know the answer, say, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Write that down. If I don't come up with the answer, grab me afterwards. We'll figure it out. So questions are real important, but you got to manage them correctly. Now the closing is the opposite of the opening. You want to have a review of what you talked about, and then you want to have a strong, strong closing. This is a mind map. It's a template on how to give a presentation. I'll tell you how to get it later. Let's go to lessons learned. Who learned? This is the first part. Who learned about anything? Anybody? Anybody learn something? We're talking about the components. Yes, sir.
You have great stories in your phone.
Yes. Thank you. Everybody does. Anybody else?
You don't want to lose control of the dialogue. You don't want to lose control
Oh,
of the
yeah.
presentation.
And it's not a good feeling either.
You're responsible.
You're responsible for everything. Richard?
Two component parts, your content and your delivery. Delivery is most important.
Yes.
Make a point, tell a story for brain coupling. I like that.
Oh, that's good. How many times have you heard a story and said, I got one, you can't wait to tell your story? I know, the same thing happened to me when I was over at such and such. That makes a big, big difference. All right, what questions do you have for me about this first part?
There's another part.
Well, we got lots of parts. I know, some of you are going to fall asleep. That's okay. That's okay. Any questions about this? What we've done so far? We got time for more. Okay, John.
I gotta commend you because you're smarter than I thought you were.
Wow.
This is artificial intelligence. Fred really Cynthia.
I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts, Fred, on an experiential kind of talk. Maybe that's more of a workshop, maybe that's not.
Yeah, probably a little bit more of a workshop.
Okay.
Yeah, but I appreciate the suggestion. I might think about that sometime.
Uh,
All right, let's move on and talk about delivery. Because remember, delivery surpasses content. Verbal delivery. You know, your voice, how you use it. It's the words you use. Words you use to inform, inspire, and motivate, and tell your stories. And then there's nonverbal delivery. We talk about vocal cues. Vocal cues are all the sounds that you make except for words. So we go through pronunciation. You need to pronounce the words correctly. I have a little bit of a mumble sometimes, I know that. And it's pronunciation, not pronunciation. Little things make a difference. Enunciation is pronunciation and enunciation. And a lot of this is dialects, you know, in different parts of this country, like a southern drawl, somebody talks, or a Harvard accent from Boston. You know, I remember one time being in London, and I thought we spoke the same language. I would have liked to have seen subtitles under this guy's I had no idea. I mean, it can really, really be tough. And Siskel and Ebert. Some of us remember Siskel and Ebert. They did movie, we date ourselves, don't we? They did movie reviews for public television. And I remember them being interviewed. And someone said, what's the best medium? Is it radio, TV, or the big screen? They didn't hesitate. Radio. Because you can, you know, in your mind's eye, you can see so many things. You paint those word pictures. When I started the presentation, I said, picture this. You know? Inflection. You don't want to be like R2-D2? It is very boring. So let's take an example. Take a sentence. I did not borrow his car. And I'm going to change the inflection point in one word. I did not borrow his car. Karen did. I did not borrow his car. Okay, took a joyride. Sorry. I did not borrow his car. Maybe I borrowed his wife's car. I did not borrow his car. Maybe I borrowed his bicycle. Just by changing the inflection in one word in a sentence changes the whole meaning of it. Cadence. Usually we talk too quickly up here because we're nervous and we don't want to get through it. That won't work. We usually talk, the average is 100 110 to 150 words per minute that we speak. Steve Jobs, one of my presentation heroes, spoke about half of that. And you want to vary the cadence. You don't want to talk too quickly. You don't want to talk too slowly. That's the toughest. Pausing. I'm the speaker. Shouldn't I be speaking? But it's the most powerful. In fact, the pause can underline parts of the presentation that you want to emphasize. Isn't that great? Tough to do, but worth working on. If you don't pause, it looks and sounds like this. All right, loudness. You've got to project your voice. You don't want to shout. Nobody wants to be shouted at. It's not good for your vocal cords either. And if you really want to get people's attention, we lower our voices. Because we lower our voices if we're telling secrets. And then there's the quality of your voice. I wish I had one of those great radio voices. Some people just have it, but they have that kind of voice. And then non-word sounds. And when you combine them with gestures and facial expressions, that's how it conveys all kinds of meaning. Those are really, really important. So other nonverbal communication, has anybody ever seen a professional mime? Oh my gosh, I was in San Francisco once. No words, you knew exactly what they were doing. Sometimes turn off your television. You can figure out what's going on. The first presidential debates, I think it was 1960, Kennedy and Nixon. This is famous. Black and white television. Nixon didn't have a clue. He didn't even know where the camera was. But he was also just out of the hospital. He'd lost weight. His suit didn't fit well. He was one of those guys who had a 5 o'clock shadow at 10 in the morning. And he sweated. In fact, now, if you go to a debate now, bring a coat. Because they turn the temperature way, way down. Kennedy understood. He looked right at that camera. He'd come back from vacation. He looked sharp. People who heard the debate on the radio, Nixon's my man. People saw on television, I would never vote for that crook. Nonverbal communication surpasses verbal. I love this slide. I listened to NPR, and I heard this, and I thought, that cannot be right. I literally went home, and I brought it up on my computer. There was a high-end piano contest, and they videoed it. And they showed the two groups of people. One saw the video with sound, the other saw it without sound. The ones who saw it without sound picked more winners. This is music. They could tell by the intensity this guy was playing with. That's why what we do and what people see is so, so important. Eye contact. In this culture, if you don't look somebody in the eye, they think, maybe you're lying to them. So a few things about eye contact. Don't get up here and be a searchlight. Nobody wants to be stared at. What you want to do is look someone in the eye, finish a thought, move on to someone else, finish a thought. It's real important. Eye contact is really important. Facial expressions. Funny, happy, sad, or angry, I guess. Angry, silly. We believe facial expression. We believe what they see. A smile. A smile is universal. I call a smile a non-physical hug. When you give one, you get one right back. Whereas gestures, we all know what this means. That may be universal, but all gestures are not. You don't point at anyone. We think about Bill Clinton. I did not have... Yeah, you don't point at people. So what I advise, if you remember Bob Dole, the senator from Kansas, he had a bad wing, and he would always kind of point with his knuckle. Oh, you just had a pen, so point with your knuckle. Also, we think when we were kids, go to your room. So you don't point. And it's little bitty things that make a big, big difference. Here's another thing. In our country, thumbs up means great going. In other countries, it's an obscene gesture. You've got to be aware of that. We have an ex-president who used to do that all the time. Your posture is important. It shows confidence in your competence. You know, that's how you want to stand. You don't want to be bent. Change. A lot of times people will play with the change and keys. I put those in my bag. But you want to look professional. This guy looks great. She looks great. Body movement. You don't want to be walking back and forth like a ping pong player, and people are, or in tennis, people are following you like that. You want to kind of stand where you are. In fact, TED Talks, and I've coached people for TED Talks, you've got to stand in a red circle. And that's really, really tough for some people to do that. All right, lessons learned on delivery. Come on, somebody.
Stand in the circle.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you're right. Gesture. It's amazing. Because little things like that can turn somebody off. Yes, ma'am.
Make your eye contact intentional.
Yes. Yes. You don't want to just kind of be glassing over people. Yeah, it's important. That's how we make connections with people. When you shake hands, you want to do that. Les.
Not too loud, not too soft.
Pardon?
Not too loud. Not too soft. Would you like me to say it louder, Fred?
That was good. Let me see if I got, because I got some sound coming up here. Well, we'll see. Well, maybe that'll work. Okay. All right. Questions on delivery.
I just wanted to say my earlier question was not a critique of your talk.
Oh, that was a good suggestion.
Experiential in my head, not, I love what you do and I'm learning so much.
Thank you very much. I didn't mean to go like this. I meant to go like Yes, sir.
The difference between standing, like the TED Talk, standing in place during your lecture as well as pacing back and forth, which one do you recommend?
Well, sometimes you don't have a choice. You want me to move? Screw up your camera. All right. So if you are going to, thank you for asking. That's another thing. Let me back up. I forgot to say any questions. If somebody asks a question, don't say, good question. Good question. Well, if Les asks me a question, I better say good question, right? Say thanks for asking. Let me answer it this way. A lot of times everybody said good question. I heard an interview the other day. Everything was a good question. I don't think it was. If you have a large group, move to that group but move deliberately. Stop, address that group, then move over to another group, stop deliberately. Because a lot of speakers, like to walk and talk, but you don't want to make it distracting. You don't want to make it distracting because that's what they're going to concentrate on. Is, where's he going to move next? Something like that. Well, again, here's that template I let people have. And let's move on to some bonus tips. Tips that will take that presentation from blah to ah. Your competition, has set the bar low. Very low. It doesn't take a whole lot to stand up from other people. If you remember, some of you remember Chapman's Ice Cream years ago, they had a slogan, a subtle little difference that makes all the difference. We've already mentioned a number of those things in public speaking. That's what it is in life. That's what it is in your businesses. Little things make a huge difference. So if you want people to remember your presentation, take something away from it, and we do, the law of primacy and recency. What that says is that the audience best remembers the first and last things you say and do. That's why you want to have a strong opening, but a stronger closing. Because the last thing I say and do today is going to be the first thing you remember. Those are the bookends of your speech, your opening and closing. Something unusual. People will remember something unusual. I remember when I was in Toastmasters, this goes back 35 years. There was a gentleman, I remember his name, Mark Flanders. He was a management consultant. And he had a baseball cap. Two-brim baseball cap. It was white on one side, management, blue on the other side, labor. Management, labor. I still remember that because it was just unusual enough. So little things that can make a difference. And repetition. I repeat myself anyway, my wife and kids say. But in terms of giving a presentation, repetition, repeating it maybe a different way will help people get it. Now when it comes to questions, I've already answered a few of these. No, I've already answered those. Okay. When it comes to your audience, our audiences these days are very, very, very diverse. Not so much this one, but ones you'll be speaking to. And you've got to be aware of things like that. Your language and what you do. Now, go through a few things. It's okay to say Englishman or Frenchman. Chinaman is a derogatory term. It's okay to say somebody is Jewish, but if you say they're a Jew, that's derogatory. You don't want to say cripple. You want to say disabled. Got to be aware of all those things. I'll tell you a story. I was speaking to Centene, and before I went on, I was standing outside, and a fellow I'd had in one of my classes came up, a black gentleman, and he said, I'm looking forward to your presentation. I said, well, you know, there's some things that you people can say that he said, whoa, 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 you can't say you people. I was not aware of that. My ignorance. And thank goodness he said that. And we've all been in those positions, right? You've said something stupid. So you want to try to find out as much of that as possible. I'm always thankful that he came along. And there are disabilities. There are visible disabilities, somebody in a wheelchair, somebody with a cane, crutches, and there are visible disabilities, and there are invisible disabilities. PTSD. I coached a lady once who had spina bifida. Now, there's different degrees of that, as there are a lot of maladies. She could drive. In the story, I remember, it's sad. She had a handicapped parking sticker on her window, but she pulled into a handicap spot, but because she was ambulatory, she couldn't walk. She'd get out of the car, people would flip her off, block her, honk at her. So you just don't know. You've got to be aware that these people are in your audience, and you have to watch your language. You know, a lot of times there's inside jokes and things. You don't want to say those. People are not aware of those. You know, LBGQT, we got to be aware of that too. Politics. Unless that is your subject, don't say it. I don't know why we're not getting sound here. You think there's any idea? Because I got that speaker on. All right, we'll live with it. All right. Yeah, unless religion, unless that's your subject, keep away from it. Gun control, again, keep away from it. Abortion, you know, these things will mess you up. I mean, I'll tell you a story. I was speaking to a group here in St. Louis, and it was kind of a test for if I would speak to the national convention. When I was talking about gestures, I said, and our ex-president, I said, don't get me started. Anyway, the guy who hired me came up to me afterwards. He said, you know, I understood what you meant by that. Some people here agree with you, some don't. If our owners had been here, you would not be invited back. And I went home and made 4 different slides on that. Because unless that's your topic, you know, you're going to distract people, they're not going to like it. And you got to be aware of those kind of things. You know, that doesn't take away your principles, but your main thing was being hired to do X thing. Oh, wait a minute. Now, a lot of people give presentations. English is not their first language. And you got to be aware of that. And they've got to do a few things that will help enhance their presentation. They can use more pictures like this, but also use the verbiage. You know, slow and show a turtle. I coached a lady for TED Talk, was from Israel. Brilliant lady. She was a professor at WashU. The first time I heard her, I had no idea what she was talking about. She just had a very heavy accent. Fortunately, she was very coachable. You know, she started enunciating, pronunciating better, slowed down, but we used a lot of images and text to help her. I know a great example. When I watch any movie, I always have subtitles on, especially the English ones. But that's important. So you'd have term. This is a great story too. This is Sean Gold. Sean Gold gave a TED Talk. Sean Gold has cerebral palsy. He is nonverbal. I know. And he's in his wheelchair, and he has some text-to-speech software. I actually thought it was so good, I thought a friend of mine had narrated it for him. And he was on stage, and he was shaking and things, and he explained that. I mean, it was an incredible TED Talk. One of the things he said, I want to be treated just like everyone else. You know, you go to a restaurant, the person pushes you in, what does he want to eat? I mean, terrible things. You know, if you know anybody disabled, they deal with that all the time. And I think he would have got a standing ovation, except he said, I want to be treated like everyone else. And nobody got a standing ovation to that point. And he does motivational speaking now. He's got a radio show, he's written stuff. Really neat. Toastmasters, we talked about the value of Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an international organization. They teach leadership skills and public speaking skills. I highly recommend it. I was in it for years. I do recommend this though. If you're looking into it, visit a variety of clubs. They all have their own flavor. Some are loosey-goosey. Some are, very regimented. The first club I joined, I think they all belonged to Mensa. Obviously, I didn't fit in. Well, I always tell people, I graduated in the half of the class that made the top half possible. You got that bell-shaped curve. You're welcome, A students. I can handle it. Some of you know I'm a mind mapper. Mind mapping is a nonlinear visual brainstorming tool, and it's a great tool to use for developing, practicing, and delivering a presentation. And it basically brings together the left linear and the right creative sides of our minds. And this is a great example. This is important. So you start your speech, I think we called it diagramming. They call it linear now. And my speech, and you got Roman numerals 1 on down. Well, the problem is, you get down to 3B, and you realize, oops, that should be 2C. 1C. The problem with going linear is you're trying to organize thoughts before you develop them. And our minds don't work that way. So mind mapping, you start in the middle and you branch out. And there's software that helps you do this. All right, here's the mind map again. Handouts. Don't. Whoops, let me back up. Don't use handouts. Here's the problem. Unless it's a workshop. If I give you a handout, what are you looking at? The handout. This is a big lesson I'll talk about some more. We cannot multitask. If you're looking at that handout, you're not looking at me. We can't do that. Here's the best example I give for that. If you watch any cable news program, you see that little ticker tape coming across the bottom?
Yeah.
If you're reading that ticker tape, you have no idea what they're talking about. And to prove it, when the commercial comes on, ticker tape's gone. Advertisers would never pay for that. It's very, very annoying. When I make the screen go black, where do you look? Yes. Because we talked about nonverbal communication surpasses verbal. How many times have you been to a presentation, they didn't even have to be there. They might as well just put the presentation on a QuickTime loop. Oh, there you go. Humor. Humor is dynamite. We love to be entertained. We love to laugh. It can add something to your presentation. It has to be relevant. I've seen some speakers get up and say, I'm going to start with a joke. It has nothing to do with the presentation. It's like having an introduction that has nothing to do with your presentation. So you got to make it relevant, and you got to be sensitive to the people there. Props. This is a prop. This helps deliver the presentation. I used to be in the coffee service business, Karen mentioned. I could have a prop like this. I could talk about different brews of coffee, different equipment. I could also do this. Picture your favorite coffee cup. Maybe it's the one you won in a contest. Maybe it's one your kids made for you. Maybe you're on a trip. I know it's cracked, it's a lousy cheap cup, but picture that cup. If you can personalize something, that's great. I remember one time giving a hat speech. I had a whole bunch of different hats, and I put on a different one. I said in our lives, we all have many roles. I'd be a parent, I'd be a chauffeur. I think I put on a king's hat, king's crown, and I said, I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. My home is my castle, but my throne is the same place each and every one of yours is, right between the sink and the shower. So, talk about blanking the screen. Talk about having a remote that does that. I just taught Steve that his remote can make the screen go blank. Talk about some foods to eat and not eat before giving a presentation. I got some great sounds I won't show. Anyway, a little alcohol. You think maybe a little Jack and Coke, calm your nerves, make it give a great delivery. If you really believe that, the next time you're scheduled for major surgery, and before the doctor grabs a scalpel, ask him to have a shot. No, ask him to have 2 shots. No, you don't want to have all alcohol. Look at a greasy hamburger? No. Coffee? Well, coffee's a diuretic. Where am I going next? Oh, whole grain foods. Those are okay to have. Fruits and vegetables are okay. Cheese, milk products, no, you get that phlegm. Water, but not too much. I always bring my own water. And something new, something you've never tried before. No.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. Unless you like those surprises. And then something carbonated so you can burp when you're up here. Don't do that. But those things are important. And this has a lot of sounds attached to it, and that can help. Well, tea is okay. Where am I going? Salads. Okay. Timing's important. You know, there are speakers before you, after you. It's all right to end a little bit earlier. You don't want to go over. That infringes on somebody's time. You also don't want to go too under it. That can mess up a schedule. Verbiage. Don't be a shock jock. You know, as soon as you say that word, you're going to turn off people. And I hear people all the time doing that. I think that's crazy because you'll turn off your audience. You know. Buzzwords, acronyms, techno-speak, don't do that. We don't impress people with words they don't know. We make them feel stupid. And if you make me feel stupid, I'm not going to hire you and I'm not going to refer you. And what you think is not a buzzword or acronym, even if the people in the audience are of the same business you're in, you don't know how long they've been there. If they've worked for the government, you don't know how many acronyms they have. So be very, very careful of that. That won't work. Okay, Oz, so, you know, like, these are called filler words. And some people, I think it's in their DNA. And it's really, really tough. But those are huge distractions. The best way to get rid of them, first thing is be aware of them. Record yourself. Secondly, pause. Because pausing is so powerful. Cliches, in his wheelhouse, think outside the box, you know, give 110%. You know, some others, I think, political season, getting ahead of his skis. Right? Isn't that what they say? Whoops. Avoid cliches. Whoops. Something didn't come up. Okay. Well, avoid cliches like the plague. That is a cliche, probably. Sorry, that came. Slide didn't work. Cottonmouth. You know, there's a lot of reasons we get it. You know, take an antihistamine, see if you can hold off on it. Nervousness. So always have your own water. I always bring my own water, room temperature with a cap on it. You know, nothing wrong with taking a drink. Gives the audience time to think about what you said. Sometimes you experiment with lozenges, maybe between your cheek and your gum. Not the red ones because, yeah, you look like that. Always take the temperature of your audience. I'm the only one speaking, but I'm getting a lot of feedback. You know, I'm looking for people nodding, looking for eye contact. A couple have nodded off. Please don't drool or snore. And then somebody looks at me like, well, shame on me. I need to revise that, talk about it in a little bit different manner. Always refresh your stuff. I worked on 3 slides for hours yesterday because I wanted to improve them a little bit. And always do that. A lectern? No. A lectern forms a physical barrier between you and the audience. In fact, there's a motivational speaker, Les Brown. I've seen him several times. Anybody know Les Brown? Dynamite. He would take the lectern and actually put it to the side. He'd go stage center. And if he had to check a note, he just, all right. It makes a huge difference. I've gone to the speaker series, and I've seen some great speakers. Sanjay Gupta was one of them. And stand behind the lectern. It was like literally a talking head. You couldn't see. And Dave, he's a comic, has an article in some magazine in Tampa. But, you know, great speaker, but never moved behind the speakers. Never moved from behind the podium. The best speakers were ones who were stage center. Just incredible. Made a big, big difference. So you want to look professional. You know, this lady does, this gentleman does, this guy, no. And this young lady, no. That's all a distraction. You're going to be looking at what they have on. I mean, Aretha Franklin, she was at Obama's inauguration. That's the hat she wore. Those rhinestones, they're in the Smithsonian, this hat. And I think she took some off of it. It's very, very distracting. You know, this is kind of my speaking outfit. So I always tell women, no blame. You notice I took my badge off. It's all clutter. In terms of public speaking, think simple language, Look simple. I know I look simple. I'll take that as a compliment. And simple slides. People have to be able to get it. You know, I carry a mirror with me. Always check for, buttons are buttons, zippers are zip, nothing green between your teeth. Give a shout out to somebody. I wish Bill had been here. I gave Bill a shout out, right? That shows that you know your audience. People are impressed by that. That individual is impressed by that. I remember I went to where is it? Down the Corda Center. They have, there's some presentation. And Bill Danius, who used to be the president of Pulaski Bank, gave a presentation on how to give a TED Talk. Well, I went there early, and I introduced myself, and he said, whoa, we're connected on LinkedIn and Facebook, aren't we? I said, I think we are. He says, hey, you wrote that book, No Sweat Public Speaking. I said, wow, I'm impressed you remember. Well, he's giving his talk on how to give a presentation, and he just stops. He said, if you really want to know how to give a great presentation, Fred Miller sitting right there, it's row 3. Boom, it's like a searchlight on me, dynamite. Picked up some business from that. So know people in your audience. That makes you really seem professional. Now, the flip side of that is never call on someone who doesn't want to be called on. I'll tell you a story. I was speaking to a big group once, taking questions. They were going okay, and all of a sudden there's a little bit of a lull, and there had been someone in the audience. This guy's taking copious notes. I love this. I just thought this guy, he'd probably tackle me for an autograph afterwards. So I said, sir, you must have a question, and he looked like that. So nobody has to worry about me calling on them because I learned my lesson. Have a warm-up act. Have a show before the show. We really didn't get a chance to show it. Some of you saw it, but I've got a little loop that runs that shows people, he's come to me with that microphone. I'm next, and it's playing the music Jaws. Think about it. You go to a professional boxing match or a rock concert, the main attraction is not the first attraction. There's a warm-up act. So think of that law of primacy and recency. If you have the opportunity to choose your position, and there's other speakers, speak last. Otherwise, you're warming up the audience for someone else, unless it's after lunch. That could be a problem. Customize your presentation for an audience. That shows that you care enough to look into what they're doing. It's a great place to brand yourself. I'm going to brand myself here. Have a quotable quote. Well, wouldn't it be great to have people quote you? That is like a tremendous thing to have done. Make it an emotional connection with the audience. Let me give you an example. And I have his permission. Anybody know Russ Henneberry?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Well, Russ started one of the first meetups I ever knew about. It was years ago. And I had just met Russ, thought he was a sharp guy, but I went to his meetup and I invited a lot of other people. And Russ was up there and he said, before we get started, we're going to go around the room. When it's your turn, stand up, tell us who you are, what you do, give us your elevator speech. He said, I'm going to go first. My name is Russ. I'm a marketing expert. I know all about the internet. I'm also a husband, a father, a son, and I'm a failure. When he said I'm a failure, he owned that audience. And then he went on to explain how he failed in a business and what it cost him emotionally, financially. Anybody see the movie Jerry Maguire?
Yeah.
Renee Zellweger, You Had Me at Hello?
Yeah.
It was a moment like that. People would come up and say, I'm so glad you invited me. This guy's amazing. I asked Russ, I said, how can you say that? He goes, it's the truth. But if you can make an emotional connection with people, that is huge. The other thing we talk about in TED Talks, show your vulnerability. When I told the story of you people, I'm a little vulnerable, right? Some of you knew that, some of you didn't. It happened. The truth doesn't change. Mm-hmm. This is super important. 3 is magical. We have all heard of 3 wise men, 3 strikes you're out, 3rd time's a charm. In terms of presentations, it gives completeness. So 1 for emphasis, the example, this is a great room for a presentation. This is a super setup. 2 for comparison, up, down, black, white, fast, slow. 3 for completeness. Now I'll give some more examples. 4 or more for a list, shopping list or a to-do list. So 3. I speak, coach, and write about networking, public speaking, and presentation skills. If you want the audience to get it, you need to educate, entertain, and explain. A great elevator speech is clear, concise, and consistent. It's magic. And we do allow that intuitively, but now that you know it, if you have 4, you'll drop it down. If you have 2, you'll goose it up. 3 is magical. Now you can add to that alliteration. That can make a big difference. That's the occurrence of that same letter, alliteration. Orvin Kimbrough, again, in their marketing piece, they talk about empower, enable, and energize. Those just stand out for you. That makes a big difference. Have a tagline. People remember taglines. Advertisers do this all the time. Coke, McDonald's have a tagline. Talk conversationally. You don't want to feel like you're sitting in a lecture. That's a big advantage. I'll talk some more about of using slides with images. I don't have a whole lot of notes. Don't try to read your presentation. You want to be conversational. And sure, I stumble a few times and I got to go back. That's the way life is, isn't it? It makes you more relatable. This is a little bitty thing, but it makes a big difference. I'm standing here for a reason. Well, first of all, Steve told me to. I need another reason, but he was right, because we read left to right. I spoke at one place, they actually put in these kind of AV systems. Everything was hardwired on the wrong side. It's a little thing, but little things make a difference. Now, if you're in Israel, it should be on that side. Oh, PowerPoint. You put in PowerPoint, it says enter again. Then there's the PowerPoint Hall of Shame. I know this isn't anyone's presentation here. Nobody comes to read your presentation. Bullet points. These are bullet points. Bullet points kill the bullet points. Because here's the problem. You're reading here. No, I'm reading here. You're reading there. And there's a disconnect completely. And I can have all kinds of flashy stuff with my Mac. I can make these bullet points, well, it won't do it on the PC. Fly in, fly out, drop in, flash out, wipe in, wipe out, flip in, get wiped out by the comet didn't come in. Okay. Find out it always in with somebody popping out in the middle and then disappearing. That's all flash. It has nothing to do with the presentation. It's entertaining, but you got to keep it relevant to what you're doing. Presentations should be clean, simple, Zen-like. Think about that. Here's my Zen bike. No panniers, no horn, no toe clips. This is a 32-point type. I think 60 is better. This is not going to work because I got some audio here. Anyway, skip that. And the slides, simple here. All kinds of flash stuff. This is stuff you don't need in your presentations. Don't do that. Make it simple. Simple text. I used to use whatever font I could find in italics, bold, and every color in the world. No. Make it simple. Make it simple. Little bitty things. And Cynthia knows all this stuff. If you have some text, put out a little bit of an angle. Right? That catches your attention. Add some color to it. Little bitty things. Corporate templates. Whoops, let me get back. I got to do that again. We're going back? Oops, my bad. All right, corporate templates. I won't ask who uses a corporate template. But some people, here's the story. I'm working with this lady from Boeing. Every slide, got that big Boeing logo. All this contact information. I said, you don't need that. You can use the white space. It's clutter. Oh, no. That's our corporate template. I said, where are you presenting? I said, where do you work? She said, well, I work at Boeing. You know that. I said, where are you going to present? She said, at work. I said, trust me, you don't know it. You don't need it. You've seen people, every single slide's got their name, phone number, 3 points of contact. You know what? If you're crappy, nobody's going to call you. If you're really good, they will seek you out.
Yeah.
It's a distraction. It's a distraction. It's so much easier to do it the other. I've got 2 templates. Here's one of them. You want these, right? Okay, here's the second one. Email me afterwards. I'll send those to you. Yeah. Plain and simple. Okay. If I say the word apple, you don't see the letters A-P-P-L-E.
Nope.
You see something round, red. If you're like me, you see a MacBook Pro and an iPhone. Let's try another one. Kiwi fruit. Kiwi fruit. Let's do like the eye doctor. Better? Better. Nobody ever said, Fred, go back to that text. I can't wait to go to Schnucks. No. We think in terms of images. There was a TED Talk guy. This guy real smart, Washington. And he talked about maps. But then he puts this text in there. A map is worth 1,000 words. Why put that text? Why not just show the map? You know? Here's the deal. If we just hear something, 10 days later, we're going to remember, 3 days later, we're going to remember 10%. If you see and hear something, 3 days later, you'll remember 65%. I'm big on images, if you haven't noticed. But it makes a huge difference in what you do. Here's another thing. When we see text, we think of images. But we have to process that. The next text should have said, toy trucks. Why not just have the screen filled with toy trucks? Then you know what we're talking about. It's all about, this is your world, Cynthia, right? I mean, images, that's what people think. But here's the thing, your image people have to understand it. So this is called an ink blot, a Rorschach, whatever. All right, so somebody might look at this and see a leaf. Somebody might look at it and see a bat. That's the problem with an image like this. You want it to be clear. Now this one's too small. This one, the resolution's terrible. That puppy I'd take for a ride. So you want to use high quality, universally understood images. You, the speaker, provide the text with your voice. All right. And that's what we're doing these days. Look at all this stuff. We use images in all this social media. And we use moving images in YouTube. Now here, this is pretty clever. It's a bunch of people. I prefer something like this. Simple background. Now this is important too. The reason I'm putting this up here, it shows diversity. Not just ethnicity, it shows age, it shows all gender diversity. This is really important. And I'm going to tell you another vulnerability story. I was speaking to a college class in East St. Louis, and I'm showing these slides. Actually, it was the deck before this one. All the people in the slides looked like me. It wasn't my audience. It's not who I am. It was embarrassing, but I had to change it. So when you're working on slides, consider not just the audience you have now, but the audience you might be speaking to. It's huge. It's huge, Cheap clip art, don't use that either. And all the fancy stuff, I can do it on a Mac. I'm sure PCs can do it. Having drop shadows. Any photographers here? Yeah, okay. So, PowerPoints, right? Those are your PowerPoints. You have a grid, 9 sections. Well, I didn't know this. I had to redo all my slides. So here's the example. I took all my slides that I had centered, and I moved them to the side. Little difference, but a subtle difference. If you have somebody looking, they should be looking inward. Little things that make a big difference. God forbid you put up a spreadsheet like this, but nobody here would. But if you do, zoom in on it. In fact, you can zoom in closer, but this is better. A graph. They can tell what you're talking about. It's much easier. Let's see. And then sound, video, put those into your program. Because you want to break it up. Because again, we have the attention span of a gnat. You're going to see me with no sound. Okay, I got to move on. Everyone has their own style. I like this slide. You have to have your own style. I know when I was in Toastmasters, we had people who could sing, dance, do all kinds of stuff. Juggle. I couldn't do any of those things. I remember one time I was driving and my wife was in the car, I was practicing a speech, and all of a sudden she stopped me. She said, whoa, who was that? I said, well, that's what Brian Tracy says about being self-employed. She said, that wasn't you. What do you say about it? Made a good point. If you have a website, and a lot of you do, my suggestion is put the audio on there. And then, well, here's the story. So again, Russ Henneberry. I go to Russ's site one day, and I'm reading his post, and I saw that little audio button. I didn't know what it was. I pushed the button. Here's Russ reading his post. And I thought, well, I was reading along with him, but I thought, wait a minute. I don't have to do that. I can listen, I can refer to the text later. Then I thought, well, Russ is a clever guy. That's another thing that Google is finding. So I thought, I'm going to record a video. I'll get an iTunes podcast channel. Doesn't cost anything. I recorded my first audio. It was a very humbling experience. I found grammatical errors. I had to rewrite some stuff. I mumbled at times. I talked too quickly at times. I found all of that. So the lesson is audio post plus written post will make you a better speaker and a better writer. I guarantee it. Does anybody have a podcast channel? It's huge. It's huge. And you'll become better the more you do of it. All right, here's something most of us don't do, and I didn't do it this time either. Usually after a presentation, the person in charge gets up and says, thanks for coming, drive home safely. That's a little bit underwhelming. So my suggestion, write an afterduction. Just like you write your own introduction, write an afterduction. It might have some things like, hey, I taught Fred to stick around if anybody wants pictures with him. I know you don't. things like that. He's got a course coming up, there's a discount. But an afterduction can be huge. You always write your own. Just like you should always write your own introduction. Okay, lessons learned on bonus tips.
Well, I mean, Fred, I've heard you speak before, but the power of three is, I use it all the time to feel like, well, how can you describe your business in 5 seconds? And I use power of three to say what I do and who I do it for. And like, you actually did that. I know.
It's huge, isn't it?
Well, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It feels like you're joking. When you can get those threes down, you're set.
Gives completeness to everything. Anybody else? Lessons learned from this?
Yeah, that afterduction.
Richard.
When you had pictures and verbiage to put it on a slant to make it better.
Yeah, just a little thing, get your attention.
I have a question though. I get
Yes, sir.
presentations of like before and after pictures of my work. So you don't want
No, that you don't.
to, okay.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, this doesn't apply to everything. This doesn't apply to everything. Yes.
Privacy and recency.
Oh, that is huge. Huge. And yeah, I mean, because the thing is, the reason to, and I'll jump to it right now, you want to take questions before you close. Because again, the last thing I say and do is the first thing you remember. So say traditionally, this is how it's usually done. Camera would come up, oh, great presentation, Rick, can you stick around for questions, right? That's what you usually do. So I'm taking questions, and I got time for one more. And Bill raises his hand. And Bill says, you know what, Fred? That thing you said about practicing in your mind, what a crock. That never works. Wasted my morning. Well, time's up. Everybody gets up to leave. That's not the takeaway I want you to have. That's why you want to have your conclusion, your closing, after you take questions. Huge. So any more questions or comments on those bonus things? Bill?
I've never heard anybody say anything about this afterduction. And I've never heard that before. I think that's enormously clever.
Thank you. I'm sure I stole it, but that's all right.
No, that's beautiful.
Well, it makes the MC look more professional too. That's the same thing to write your own introduction. A lot of times that person introducing you didn't even want to do it, but that's a speaking opportunity for them. And if they look like a hero, I'll give you a perfect example. I was speaking at Maryland Heights Chamber, and I sent the guy my introduction. Email it to him. Almost immediately, I get a reply. You got to be kidding me. I said, no, Mike, that's the introduction I've used many times. He says, I'm not a funny guy. I don't do that kind of stuff. Here's another thing. Always print your introduction and take it with you. They may have lost it, they may have trashed it, and they may have given the job to somebody else. So I walk up to him and I said, I brought another copy. I really appreciate the speaking opportunity in case you need a copy of my introduction. He said, Fred, I told you, I don't do this kind of stuff. I'm not a funny guy. I said, come on, Mike, we're friends. Okay. Well, after the first groaner, perked me up, he's doing stand-up, I made him a hero. You can do the same thing with your introduction, and they'll appreciate that. Yeah, that makes a big, big difference. Any other questions, comments? All right, we're going to move on. The fear of public speaking. I know this doesn't apply to anybody here. All right. But first of all, if you have it, you're not alone. Lots of people have a fear of public speaking. In fact, 75% of the population, to one degree or another, has that fear. There's even a word for it. It's called Glossophobia comes from the Greek glosso, tongue, phobos, fear. It's a word. It's not a medical condition. And it can be lessened. You don't want to get rid of it completely. And what I found as I've studied this over the years, the fear of public speaking is an equal opportunity fear. I've coached lawyers and doctors, father of the bride-to-be. I think he was having panic attacks, thinking about toasting his daughter at the wedding.
Needs milk.
Lots and lots of people have that fear. You know, it doesn't matter. Education, it doesn't matter. And then one reason we have it is, let me get this, okay. So people say, well, why do we have that fear of public speaking? Well, the simple answer is, why not? Most of our conversations are one-on-one. A lot of times they're on the phone. You don't even see or hear a person, or you hear them, and a lot of it by texting and messaging. So standing up here is like, whoa, this is a little bit different. You know? We've all experienced that. You know? Or maybe it was a bad experience. Maybe you spoke to a group and you remember. I've had people talk to me about, 3 years ago, I had this terrible experience, and they're still carrying that baggage with them. Sometimes it could be somebody in the audience. I know a financial guy. He'll speak to 100 retirees at a time, but if his boss or some of his fellow workers are in the audience, he's a basket case. He can't handle it. And then there are the what ifs. What if you guys don't like me? What if I'm not giving the presentation you're hoping you're going to get? What if the speaker just before me was really, really good, and compared to them, I suck? People worry about that kind of stuff all the time. Get over it. And then there's the big what. What am I going to talk about? I mean, these people have forgotten more than I ever know. I got nothing of value to offer. Well, here's another Bill story. So I'm at my computer one day, and Bill emails a question. And I happen to know the answer. And I type it out. I can't remember the question. I send it to him. Almost immediately, I get a one-word response. Wow. Well, I'm thinking, what's wow? So I send back, what's wow? I go back to work, and he comes back about 15 minutes later with this great response that was relevant to this. He says, sometimes your knowledge base is so wide and so deep, you don't know what you know. See, your everyday, that could be somebody's payday. Your everyday, Steve, could be somebody's aha moment. Each and every one of us has knowledge and experience people would love to hear, and they would benefit from them. And we don't think about that. That won't work. Okay. And then, how do you find out those things? Well, work with somebody else and ask questions like, who cares? What'd you learn from that? So what? What would you do different next time? And develop those things. Does that make sense to everybody? We're all too close to ourselves. We have no idea. And that's why you're really better off working with someone else. Then there's the imposter syndrome. They're going to find out. I shouldn't be up here. Oh gosh, I don't know. Anybody ever have that? Yeah. And it's usually younger people with older people in the audience. I worked with a guy who had that. I said, trust me. You wouldn't have been chosen for this position unless you were really, really good. Somebody put their reputation on the line to have you do this. Get over it. But that can be really, really tough for people. So the fear of public speaking goes hand in hand with the fear of failure. But the fact is, failing is a good thing. Bill Gates said, if you get it right the first time, you don't give it a second thought. So failure, it's first attempt in learning. You've just got to do it. Failing's a great thing. What happens, you screw up, you get ticked off, then you figure out what went wrong, then you have a few examples might make it better, and that's how you learn. I mean, we should welcome it. Some failing is easy. Here's a picture when I got my first computer. Jeez. But, I was doing these tutorials, and quite frankly, I'm a slow learner. But I'd lock myself in the room, and it might have taken me an hour, and maybe you could have got through it in 15 minutes. That's okay, nobody knows. Rubik's Cube, I wouldn't even attempt to do it in front of anyone else. But some failing, it's right out there in public. Public speaking. Everybody knows. But the fact is, here's our comfort zone. And you've heard this before. Inside our comfort zone, we're comfortable. Outside, we're not so comfortable. But the learning begins at the edge of our comfort zone. And the idea is that get out of it, make it larger, and speak. All right. Any lessons learned or questions about the fear of public speaking? Les?
First attempt at learning, you fail.
Yeah. I mean, I hope I'm at a point in my life where I actually welcome it. It's still tough, though. It's still tough. Any other comments, questions? All right. All right, here's some nuggets to lessen that fear. First of all, never tell people you have it. I worked with a guy once. He gets up. He's like, I hate this. I didn't practice. I don't like public speaking. Well, he looked pretty sharp when he got up there, but everybody starts staring at him. Well, you stared me enough, I'm going to shake, and don't do that. Never do that. And those butterflies in your stomach that we all get, well, Toastmasters says get them to flying formation. What you want to do is take that nervous energy and put it into your presentation. Anyone ever sit through a boring presentation? Right? Not this one, I hope. Okay. All right. So successful companies are customer focused. It means that medicine is patient focused, education is student focused, the hospitality industry is guest focused. Well, if you want to be successful as a speaker, we need to be audience focused. It's all about you guys. It's not about me. And that's one of the problems. A lot of times people are looking at themselves. How do I look? I hope, is there any lint on me? No, you don't want to do that. And the fact is that, well, I always ask the audience, and I'll ask you guys, is anybody sitting there thinking, I can't wait till Fred screws up. Man, I'll be on his Facebook page, LinkedIn. He'll never speak again in St. Louis. No. A lot of you are glad I'm up here and you're not. The audience came to get something out of it. And if you screw up, they feel for you. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's not going to work. Okay. This is the other neat thing about being a speaker. You don't have to be perfect. If we're in a play and I forget my lines, whoops, that's a big deal. If I'm in the marching band and they're all coming this way and I'm going that way, that's a problem. But in terms of being a speaker, you don't have to be perfect. In fact, if you're too perfect, people can't relate to it. They can't relate to it at all. Another way to lessen that fear of public speaking, I think I agree with most of the people I met today. We don't shake hands like we used to. We elbow bump or we fist bump. But that is huge to be able to meet people before you speak to them. I have gone up and down the aisle in an auditorium. I've greeted people at the door when they come in because it's a lot easier to relate to people. Plus, because most speakers don't do it, they're going to pay more attention to you. Name tags are huge. Everyone forgets people's names. They bring people together. If you're talking about your passion, that trumps everything. Passion plus knowledge plus technique, you will own the audience. I always arrive early. I think I got here at 7:30 today because I had to set up. I've got a little bit different system. Always, and again, you're the speaker. You're responsible for everything. Absolutely everything. Have a checklist and use it. Has anyone ever had a checklist and not used it? All right. Have to do that. You want to check out the room. And here we are. No, but you never know what's going to be. So what I advise people to do, develop a signature presentation. Have a signature presentation you can modify for different audiences. Always keep up on the latest and the greatest. I'm always researching and revising things. When you're giving your presentations, tell them where you're going to take the questions. Always take their temperature. This lessens your fear of public speaking. Find a friendly face. Okay, somebody, help me out here. A lot of friendly faces. But it makes a big difference. And you want to find that friendly face and move on to another one. And if you see this guy, look somewhere else. Here's the problem. Everybody brings all kinds of stuff here. You got something that's due. You had a little fight with your kid this morning. Don't be a minor. I remember I had a lady in my audience. She was a PR person. I thought she could send me some business. She kind of looked like that guy. She comes up afterwards. She says, I loved it. Thank you very much. She was just thinking. Always have some interaction with the audience. Ask some questions, raise hands. The only person you should ever compete with, yourself. Right? Give a better speech than you gave last time. And stuff happens. That's why I bring all this other stuff. Although Steve did a better job and he got me going on his. Bring all this stuff with you. You never know what's going to happen. Nobody wants to hear the AV guy didn't show up, right? In Keynote, I use Keynote. This is called Slide Sorter. I forgot what it's called in PowerPoint. But I print all these out. I've got all my stuff printed out. If the screen goes dark or my computer crashes, I can pull this out and give a presentation. And because I've got mostly images, I don't have to try reading any bullet points. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That's huge. And then you do it in modules, so I can modify that presentation for the group I'm going to be talking to. Everybody familiar with Presenter's View? Well, that's what I'm using now. A lot of people aren't. I can see the slide you're looking at, and I can see the one coming up, and I've got notes I can see. That's dynamite. Mind mapping, we talked about that. Images, that goes hand in glove with the images I'm using on my presentation. Because one of the problems with text is, especially when you get nervous, looks a little blurry. Anybody ever had that happen? I can't, I wish I could have read it. So a mind map, and right now I'm talking about notes. That's a whole presentation on nuggets to lessen the fear of public speaking. One piece of paper. That's really cool. Deep breathing exercises, and you can look this up. You're familiar with that. That can help lessen your fear of public speaking. Get a good night's sleep. Sleep's important. Sometimes gestures. Usain Bolt, power pose, some isometrics. But the silver nugget for getting over the fear of public speaking and delivering a great presentation is practice. Practice, practice, practice. Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book Outliers. 10,000 hours to become an expert. First person I thought about, Michael Phelps. If he wasn't in the pool or sleeping, he was swimming. No, excuse me, he was in the pool or sleeping or going to school. So this is important. What Gladwell says is practice isn't the thing you do once you're good. It's the thing you do that makes you good. And let's relate that to sports. Think of professional athletes. Even think of high school and college athletes. The amount of time they actually spend in the field playing their game, it's infinitesimal to the amount of time they spend working out, practicing. Why would somebody think you can get up here and just wing it? You know, when we coach TED Talk people, our rule of thumb is 1 hour of preparation for every minute of presentation. Yeah, and that's conservative. But put that in terms of athletes. Practice, record yourself, listen to yourself. It's tough, but do that. Look in the mirror, practice in your mind's eye. Practice amongst friends and family. And when you ask them for a critique, don't just say, how'd I do? You don't want a attaboy. Tell me 3 things you like, and give me 3 opportunities for improvement. Video yourself. Now this is a tip I got from Mark Brown. He won an international Toastmasters contest. Record yourself on your tablet or your notebook. The first time you go back to it, turn the sound off. Just watch. Are you scratching yourself? Are you leaning? Because nonverbal surpasses verbal delivery. Just watch. Second time, just listen. Don't watch the audio. Don't watch the video. Do you have any ahs or ers? How is your pronunciation and enunciation? Third time, watch the video, audio and video. You'll see and hear what the audience sees and hears. And the fourth time, you have somebody with you doing that, because you're blind to some things and you're too kind to yourself on other things. That can make a difference. Impossible is impossible. And then, practice, meditation. I think it was Clement Stone said, whatever the mind of man can conceive, he can believe. So meditate. Picture the audience liking you. Picture yourself at ease. And if meditation doesn't work, try medication. A little Jack and Coke. Now, there are prescribed medicine. I coached a psychiatrist, and they're called beta blockers. And I said, how'd that work for you? He said, well, I wasn't nervous, but I was pretty boring. I don't talk like that. But sometimes you need something like that. There's acupuncture thing, all kinds of stuff people can use. This is a great tip too. Practice the sticky spots in your presentation. I got my opening nailed and my closing. But there's always those spots that either fix them or get rid of them. Because we tend to avoid them, and it's going to weigh on your mind if you don't do something. What's that thing?
Virtual reality.
Virtual reality. I was coaching a pediatrician. He has a virtual reality thing. Watches himself. He's amongst a big audience. You know, I have cannabis. Yeah, I know a lady. It's funny. She was selling this stuff, and she said she had fear of flying and fear of public speaking. And this stuff worked for her. I said, so you're going to give a speech on the airplane. But rehearse, and when you deliver your presentation, it seems unrehearsed. So the golden nugget, if you want to be a better speaker and lessen that fear of public speaking, is speak. Speak, speak, speak. The learning is in the doing. And the more you do it, to as many different audiences as possible, the better you'll get. Or go get some courage from the wizard. You know?
The wizard.
So has anybody ever failed? Yeah, we learn more from failure than what goes right, don't we? I mean, we should embrace it. Too bad this Michael Jordan video doesn't show. That's okay. So basically, face the fear and do it anyway. Get up there and speak. This is one of my grandsons. He's 13 years old now. But when he was, less than a year old, he was just learning how to walk. And you've seen little kids, he pull himself up that table and he'd surf a step this way and surf a step that way, let go with one hand, let go with another, boom, right on the ground. He didn't cry, but he pulled himself right back up, got his balance, surfed again, boom. Well, you can see where I'm going with this. When, why, and where, as we're growing up, do we decide that if we fall down, we're not going to pick ourselves right back up and try it again? That applies to public speaking. I guarantee the worst speech you'll ever give will be far better than the one you never give. Right. Lessons learned? Questions? Cynthia.
Frank, you mentioned 3 things and I missed one of them. You mentioned passion, knowledge, and
Technique.
thank you.
Technique. Yes, ma'am.
I like that if you're too perfect, people can't relate.
Exactly. We can't.
It takes the onus off.
I know. I purposely make these mumble. No. Yeah. You sympathize. We empathize with people when that happens. Okay. I've got some gifts for everyone. Elevator speeches. Whoa, Richard. I'm sorry.
Yeah, one thing that you didn't say, but you intimated that when you're giving your talk, they don't know what it's about. But we always think you make a mistake.
Exactly.
They don't know.
You make an excellent point. I should have left that. You have no idea what I've added to this presentation or why I've left that. You're right. That's one of the beauties of speaking. Yeah, thank you very much for remembering that. So I've got some templates. So elevator speech template, speaker's template. All right, we're getting towards the end here. Okay, get those templates. Email me, fred@nosweatpublicspeaking.com. So I speak, coach, and do workshops on public speaking, presentation skills. I'm always looking for speaking opportunities. Now it's time to close my presentation. Okay. No pressure. All right. Now there's 2 parts to it. A review of what we've talked about and then a strong closing. And we talked about a lot of stuff. I know this went on further than some people would like. But there's a lot of stuff here. We talked about content and delivery. Delivery surpasses content. And on the delivery side, verbal, nonverbal. Nonverbal is what people believe. We believe what we see. We talk about things that will take that presentation from blah to ah. Strong opening, stronger closing. Stories. It's all about stories. Then we talk about the fear of public speaking, why we have it, and the answer was why not. And nuggets to lessen it. Practice, practice, practice. Speak, speak, speak. So let me close with a challenge and a prediction. And here's my challenge, and it's to each and every one of you. The next time someone gives you a speaking opportunity, now let's change it. Find that speaking opportunity. Seek it out. Here at e4e, your trade association, chambers of commerce, wherever you can, seek out that speaking opportunity and then grab it. Then prepare, practice, and deliver that presentation. using all the components, parts, and elements of no sweat public speaking. Do that. My prediction is this. Your next talk, the next presentation you give, your next speech will be absolutely, positively, there's no doubt in my mind, that presentation will be no sweat. Thank you.